Hannelore, Schmatz, Mount Everest, 1979. In 1979, Hannelore Schmatz achieved her life's dream, touching the summit of Everest. But the price was paid on the descent. Night fell. Temperatures plummeted to minus 40 degrees. She and her companion were utterly depleted. Defying her team leader's pleas, she sank to the snow. She just asked to sit and rest for a moment, leaning against her backpack, and fell asleep forever. In the death zone, exhaustion isn't just a feeling, it is total systemic collapse. When you are drained, blood is pulled from your extremities to protect vital organs. The overwhelming urge to sleep is the brain's final defense mechanism before shutting down completely. For decades, her body remained sitting there, her eyes wide open, her brown hair blowing in the freezing wind, forcing hundreds of passing climbers to face the mountain's brutal reality. Do you think death always comes with a peaceful closing of the eyes? At the highest places on our planet, death is an eternal monument. Starting at 8,000 meters is the death zone. Here, your biological clock begins a countdown. Your body is quite literally dying with every breath you take. There are no coffins, no funerals. When you fall, the only legacy left behind is your body, frozen against the sky. George Mallory, Mount Everest, 1924. Nearly a century ago, in 1924, George Mallory attempted to conquer Everest. He had no modern oxygen tanks, dressed only in fragile layers of wool and gabardine. When asked why he wanted to climb Everest, he left behind a historic reply: because it's there. Then he vanished into the mist, leaving behind a mystery that haunted the world for 75 years. Did he reach the top before he died? In 1999, he was found, not as dry bones. It was a perfectly preserved body. His flesh was pale as alabaster. His fingers dug deeply into the frozen scree. The rope around his waist had snapped. He had fallen, but he was still clinging to the mountain until his very last second. Why was his body intact? Extreme sub-zero temperatures and bone-dry air turned the death zone into a giant freezer. Biological decomposition is halted. Time up here is frozen. Rob Hall, Mount Everest, South Summit, 1996. Rob Hall was a legendary guide. During the catastrophic blizzard of 1996, he could have saved himself, but he chose to stay near the South Summit with a dying client. His loyalty sealed his death warrant. He was trapped at 8,700 meters through 2 freezing nights. His hands and feet were frozen solid. His oxygen was gone. He knew he would not survive. This is the ultimate tragedy of the technological age, the paradox of connection. You can speak directly to the person you love from thousands of miles away, yet remain completely helpless and utterly alone in the silence. Via satellite radio, he was patched through to his home in New Zealand to say a final goodbye to his pregnant wife. His last words echoed through the storm. "Sleep well, my sweetheart. Please, don't worry too much." Then the radio died. Silence consumed everything. Beck Weathers, Mount Everest, 1996. Some are left for dead, but Beck Weathers was left behind twice in a single day. During that same 1996 storm, Beck's corneas froze over, blinding him. He collapsed in the snow. Rescue teams checked on him, found his breathing shallow and his body rigid. Under medical triage protocols, he was deemed beyond saving. They left him behind. But 15 hours later, a savage miracle occurred. He fell into a coma induced by profound hypothermia. His heart rate slowed to an almost undetectable crawl. His body automatically shut down all non-essential functions to protect the brain. And then he opened his eyes. His right arm, stiff and blackened by frostbite, was raised to the sky like a mummy's. Driven by the most primal biological instinct to survive, he stood up. He staggered blindly through the blizzard and, miraculously, found his way back to camp alone. He lost his nose, his right hand, and his left fingers, but he had literally wrestled his life back from death. David Sharp, Mount Everest, 2006. Physical collapse is terrifying, but there is something far worse on Everest: moral collapse. At 8,500 meters lies a small limestone cave. For decades, it was home to Green Boots, an Indian climber who froze there in 1996. He became a macabre waypoint, a literal landmark. But 10 years later, in 2006, another climber named David Sharp took shelter in that exact same cave. He was freezing, he was out of oxygen, but he was still alive. Over the next 10 hours, more than 40 climbers passed by that cave. Some looked at him, some even spoke to him, but then they kept walking toward the summit. They literally stepped over a dying man to reach the top of the world. David Sharp slowly froze to death, curled up just inches away from Green Boots, surrounded by people who chose glory over a human life. How does human empathy vanish so easily? At extreme altitude, the brain is starved of oxygen. This severe hypoxia doesn't just kill your organs, it shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the empathy center of your brain. You regress to a reptilian state of mind. Tunnel vision sets in. The concept of saving a stranger evaporates, replaced by a single, ruthless instinct: keep moving or die. The bystander effect at 8,000 meters isn't just cowardice, it is biological apathy. Nature has no malice. It is simply indifferent. Hundreds of bodies still lie on Everest today, serving as eternal sentinels of the ice. These mountains are great not because they touch the sky, but because they hold the most brutal truths about the limits of human endurance